Good afternoon, race fans. What an extraordinary weekend of racing in Phoenix. We had a great Indy race. We had a great O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race. And then we had an absolute phenomenal, well, maybe that's too strong of a word, an outstanding Phoenix Racing Cup Series. So let's get into it. I think, going to touch briefly on Indy because I'm still learning about Indy. It's not a series that I've followed closely over the years. Usually it's just like, let's watch the Indy 500, maybe one or two races a year. But what so far, watched the St. Petersburg race last week. I thought that was fantastic. I like seeing the dynamic, the difference between the truck race and the Indy race. And then this week we got to kind of see the dynamic, the difference between the Indy cars and the O'Reilly and the Cup cars. So definitely a fun weekend. Really neat to see, was it Josef Newgarden come from behind to win. Kind of rough to see Alex Palou. Now I've watched Alex Palou a few times because that dude can drive, and I've been thoroughly impressed with him. But he kind of got up into somebody and then put his front into the wall and destroyed his vehicle, so ended his day early. So rough day for Alex Palou. But what can I say? I think I'm gonna be paying a little bit more attention to Indy from now on. I think it's definitely growing on me. I've never been as much of that open wheel racer fan. I like the more physicality, the more draft and more strategic racing that stock car racing has. So maybe I'm a little biased towards stock car racing over open wheel, but I thought the open wheel Indy race was actually pretty good. So definitely worth exploring some more. And then we had the O'Reilly race on Saturday. And one of the things I put in my notes was kind of how clean of a race it was. Like almost no cautions. We really only had a couple cautions toward the end of stage three. And I thought it was a super clean race overall, really good passing. Jesse Love looked dominant most of the day, as well did also, I guess I should say, the junior motorsports cars were all, I would think it was like four out of the top six cars were junior motorsports cars for a while. So definitely thought that was really interesting. And then you had Carson Kvapil having a phenomenal day. Looked like he was about to get his first win. And of course, Justin Allgaier, who has the most laps led at Phoenix outside of Kyle Busch, but only has two wins. And that is kind of wild. So he didn't lead a ton of laps in that race yesterday. I'm sorry, Saturday. But what a great win. And I like Justin Allgaier. He's such sort of a humble dude, but a great racer, really good. And it's good to see somebody kind of get that win and get going. So we'll see how it plays out for the rest of the season. And but overall, I thought the O'Reilly race was really good. Super clean racing, a lot of good passing. Tires were not an issue. What can I say? Let me double check my score. I gave it a 76. So I gave it 8 on enjoyment, 8 on racing quality. I gave it only a 7 on strategy. And the reason being is that it was such a almost mundane race. It was so clean. There was no major strategy changes. It was just sort of like, solid middle of the road. Like, people pit when they were supposed to pit. There was no, hey, we're going to go short on this. We're going to, there was no tire selection drama. There was nothing like that. So I gave both strategy and tire a 7 and then passing an 8. So, but overall, I thought it was a really good race. But just didn't have that final strategy variable to kick it up a notch. And then I thought tires were basically a non-factor in that race. Now the big question is, did all the Indy rubber on the track actually help or hurt the O'Reilly cars get more grip on the track? Because it looked like they could go almost anywhere. I thought that was a really interesting dynamic. Like, what did the Indy rubber do to the groove? What did it do to, how wide the groove was or where you could get grip? And then, but great race. I thought it was a really good race overall. Solidly above average, not to the level of, COTA or Atlanta or Daytona, but definitely a really good race for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. But again, I do think we need to call it the Grand National Series, but that's me being a little autistic. So, all right, let us get into Cup because what can I say? I thought that was a phenomenal race. And I've dubbed Ryan Blaney the comeback kid. I mean, the stash alone kind of makes me want to give him a sort of Western, name, like Billy the Kid or something like that. So we're going to get Ryan Blaney the comeback kid because what an extraordinary performance by him. Now, all day, the three Penske Fords were strong. You had a grouping of all three of them in the front toward the beginning of the race. And then Ryan Blaney had two pit issues. Like the first time, the front left lug did not fully seat. He had to go back all the way around and come back and pit again. And then the second time, the rear lug on the left side did not fully seat, and he was able to pull into the Logano pit, get that tightened, and get back on track. But the booth announced that he actually had to pass 49 cars on Sunday. 49. That is unbelievable. So what an extraordinary feat from the Penske Ford, Ryan Blaney, number 12. Wow. I'm sure your sponsor, the Dent King or whatever that was, is super happy because, you know, everybody, the entire commentary for the race was on Ryan Blaney making that massive comeback. But you also had the JGR Toyotas doing really well throughout the day. So it was interesting to see. The three cars that I thought had the most speed were Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, and Logano. Cindric was close, but he was not quite there. He was a little bit behind, and he was usually the third Ford in that group. The RFK Fords had some speed, but then they made some mistakes. We know Buescher had to do a speeding violation, had to come down pit lane again. There were a couple of that kind of thing. So it was a little bit sloppy from different pits or drivers during the day with a few penalties assessed. But overall, the big story is the massive comeback by Ryan Blaney, who was up front, and then he had to go all the way to the back and then come all the way to the front again. And just an extraordinary performance. There was Carson Hocevar also had a really good comeback, but it looked like he kind of faded toward the end of the race there. He was supposed to start P7. Sounds like they had an alternator or electrical issue they had to fix, so they swapped out the alternator and some of the gauges, and so they had to start at the very end. But he did make his way all the way up to sixth position before fading a little bit and finishing 20th. So not sure what happened there. Maybe it was a tire or just didn't have the speed at the end. Something happened, but overall, I thought this was a phenomenal race for Phoenix. I'm generally not a big fan of Phoenix, and the reason being, and it's just me not liking the flat spot. I don't like the shortcut, and the fact that the booth kept calling it a shortcut is what kind of annoys me because yes, it's technically fair and it's technically within the rules, and so everybody can do it. But I actually wish that they would maybe make like one lane around the bottom of the track on the flat spot that is like, look, this is the flat, and then exclude the rest of it so you don't get that mad dash 5 wide across the flat spot on the back of the track. It just annoys me. It's just me. It's not anything the drivers, they're playing by the rules. I just think that, in the future, maybe next year, they should paint track limits and go, you know what? We're going to mimic an infield here by painting it green and maybe put a white border around it so you know exactly where it is. Or maybe you glue down some field turf, make it look like AstroTurf, something, just something to make it so that drivers know we're not supposed to cut across here. Because it's just my personal annoyance at it. I'm sure there are others out there that also find the shortcut just kind of outside of the spirit of racing on a circle track. But it's not a big deal. It's mostly an annoyance because overall, as I said before, everybody can do it, so it's fair for everybody. I just think it's kind of a weird feature of Phoenix, and I'm not sure why it's allowed other than it's like, well, why not? But overall, I thought it was a great day for JGR. I thought Spire had a pretty good day. I thought Shane Van Gisbergen, even though he spun out twice, had a pretty good day. So let's jump into the points. And so obviously, Tyler Reddick, solid day, added 39 points. And, you know, he's sitting first. He's sitting first with 225 points ahead of Ryan Blaney by 60. So I think that means if Tyler Reddick has a bad day and Ryan Blaney has a great day next week in Vegas, we may see somebody finally competing with Tyler Reddick for the lead. But all depends on how Tyler Reddick does in Vegas next week. So will definitely be interesting. So we see Ryan Blaney jumped up 2 spots. Bubba Wallace dropped 1. Chase Elliott dropped 1. Shane Van Gisbergen may be the big story because after 4 races, he's sitting 5th in points, and that's only 1 road course, 2 super speedways, and an oval track. And we're now seeing Shane Van Gisbergen, even with 2 spins, still got an 11th place finish at Phoenix. So really excited to see how he does on the Vegas mile and a half and some of the other, circle tracks. So definitely something to watch. Joey Logano, like he showed a lot of speed, but he made a couple big errors. One pushing Chastain through the flat spot on a restart, and again, I'm not sure if he was trying to cut inside and Ross Chastain blocked him, and then Logano tried to cut back and Chastain blocked again, or if they were trying to get hooked up to do a push through the middle there. I'm not sure. It looked a little odd. Logano definitely hit him off center, causing him to kind of go up the track into a couple cars. I think it was Barry and Cindric. So Logano took out his own teammate with that move, unfortunately. And he also took out Barry, took himself out later. And just a rough day for Logano. Started on the pole, only got 23 points, but he's still in the top 6. So we'll see how that plays out for the rest. I guess he's technically tied with Christopher Bell on points. But I got to say, Christopher Bell and Logano and Blaney were definitely the 3 fastest cars on that track. So think that is going to be an interesting dynamic to keep watching. And then let's get into JGR, because last week JGR didn't have anybody above the cut line. This week they got 3 cars above the cut line. And then Chase Briscoe, I feel so bad for Chase Briscoe. He's one of the, like, as I said, like 20 drivers that I like to watch and kind of cheer for a little bit. I really like him. I think he's a good dude. I like how he's kind of humble and just kind of like like a normal guy, but a phenomenal racer. And here he is. He's sitting in 33rd. It's because of 2 DNFs and just, he had, I think, brake rotor issues. Maybe something happened, and then he ended up coming around the curve and going up into the wall because he either lost tire pressure or something happened on that front right, and then he hit with enough force that the kind of front end of that vehicle jumped a little bit. So definitely something to figure out, because there were several overheated rotors. I think Noah Gragson had a rotor that exploded, which then caused 3 tire punctures. It was Zilish, McDowell, and William Byron, like one after another. I think it was Byron, then Zilish, then McDowell coming down pit lane, all with that flat right front tire. And that's different than some of the other guys who were, doing super low tire pressure to try to game the system, try to get a little bit more traction. So I almost took away a half point from the tires because of the issue with Noah Gragson's rotor exploding and puncturing some. And also, I think it punctured, I think it was Cole Custer, his radiator punctured. Something just went right through his front grille and just destroyed that radiator. So definitely something, I almost took a half point away from that in my scoring of the race. So I wasn't sure if I should. So I may revise this later, but I thought the tires were definitely a factor. Tire strategy was definitely a factor. Passing was phenomenal. I think the 750 horsepower package really helped. But I do think we got some issues with the Chevys and speed on these intermediates right now because they did not perform as well as I think they probably should have. Um, we just basically the whole day was Toyota and Ford up front, and the Chevys trying to break in, and it was tough for them to get there. Kyle Larson was the finished third, and he was the best performing Chevy of the day. So, but yeah, let's continue with JGR because we got Christopher Bell now sitting tied for sixth place with Joey Logano. Then we got Denny Hamlin broke in. He's now 12th. He's sitting he's sitting 118 points behind Tyler Reddick, 7 points above the cut line. But he moved up 11 spots. Christopher Bell, I think he had to have been the biggest mover of the day. He moved up 18 spots. So huge day for Christopher Bell. Big day for Denny Hamlin. Ty Gibbs, pleasantly surprised. Pleasantly surprised because now he was just below the cut line before. He was the top performing JGR Toyota before this weekend, and now he is just above the cut line, 1 point above Brad Keselowski, sitting in 15th. So congratulations to JGR for kind of getting points on the board. You had a rough start, but you're making up ground quickly. And I thought the JGR Toyotas, especially Christopher Bell, showed good speed. So did Ty Gibbs. He showed really good speed. He was running in the top 3 or 4 much of the day. So congrats on him. Plus, I think we have to talk about it. Tire strategy was definitely something that everybody was looking at JGR kind of going, what's going on? Because you had Ty Gibbs take 2 tires in track position. He started on the front row at that last restart. And then you had Denny Hamlin, I think he took 4. Christopher Bell took 4. But we want to make sure that we differentiate between this race at Phoenix and Denny Hamlin in the fall last year. Because remember, Denny Hamlin took 4 tires and they just had an overtime. Christopher Bell took 4 tires and they had 14 laps to go when the restart happened. So not quite the same situation. And I do think if maybe there were like another 5 or 6 laps, I do think Christopher Bell probably would have caught up to Blaney because he was gaining about a tenth, maybe 2 tenths every lap. And I just think he ran out of time to actually catch up to Ryan Blaney. So definitely something to keep paying attention to. The other story I want to talk about, look at Shane Van Gisbergen sitting 5th. He spun out twice. He finished 11th. And yet after 4 races where there's only one road course, he's sitting in 5th. Then we also have the Spire truck, almost said Spire trucks, Spire cars. We got Malcolm McDowell sitting in 8th. He moved up 1 position. We got Carson Hocevar. He dropped 4 spots, but I gotta say, from starting in the back, working his way all the way forward, and then, maybe fading toward the end, I thought he had a decent day. He scored 21 points on the day, and he's 3 above the cut line at 14th. So definitely something to continue watching. And then you got Suarez 1 point below the cut line, and he got caught up in a couple wrecks. One looked like it might have been him spinning and causing some issue. Another one he just got caught up in. So feel kind of bad for him, but I think he definitely had a decent day, but he could have been better. Same thing with Ryan Preece. He was doing solid until Stenhouse got into the rear of Zilich, which then got into the front of Preece and spun Preece out, but Zilich was able to catch it, and same thing with Stenhouse, so they kept going. But Preece was a little bit of a victim of that one, but he is sitting 8 points out of the chase, but only 2 positions out. So definitely something to keep watching. And then Todd Gilliland had a good day. But overall, it was Austin Cindric showed a lot of speed early, and frankly, he added 21 points, but because of added 13 points. Looking at the wrong Austin there, 13 points. He got taken out by Logano, not by intention, but because Logano into Chastain, into Barry, into Cindric, and so it's just. That chain of events that just took out his own teammate is rough. I'm sure Logano may have to buy him dinner or something for that, but what can I say? But let us get into how I scored this race. Because overall, I thought it was a really good race. Um, and I was debating whether I wanted to give tires a 7.5 because of the punctures caused by debris, but I decided that that wasn't fair because a lot of the tire issues were we're going to run the pressures well below what we're supposed to run them, and then we're going to get a flat tire because we're running hard. And I think that was majority of it. And so I actually think that is good tire issue, not bad tire issue. These guys are being aggressive, causing tire issues. The three flats caused by debris, as I said, I almost took a half point there, which would have scored this at a 79 altogether instead of an 80. But I decided that that wasn't quite fair because the two tire, four tire strategy came into effect later in the race. So overall, I gave this eights across the board. I thought the 750 horsepower package gave great passing all day. I thought the tires actually became a factor and became a strategy factor. And I just think overall strategy, racing quality, and enjoyment was eight across the board. So what can I say? I think this was a very solid race, not an all-timer, not a, high 80s, but right on that 79 to 80 cusp. So above average, but not extraordinary. So tell me what you think. Comment below. Please like, subscribe, and let me know what you think. Talk to you soon.